Something was wrong with Ryan Martin, and no one saw it coming. They called him unstoppable, a racing legend in the making. But beneath the roaring engines and blinding fame was a truth no one ever expected, a truth soaked in struggle, sacrifice, and silent suffering. Before he became the fearless fire-breather of street outlaws, no prep kings, Ryan Martin was just a restless young man from Oklahoma chasing more than speed, he was chasing purpose. But what happens when the chase becomes a curse? This isn't just a story about drag racing. It's a story about resilience through heartbreak, about a man who rose like a phoenix, only to face a fall that stunned even his closest fans. And now, we're telling it all. He wasn't just behind the wheel, he was the wheel. That deep, roaring engine. It echoed his heartbeat. Ryan Martin's journey didn't begin in fame, it began on quiet streets, in a modest 1989 Mustang GT that was just loud enough to shake windows and fast enough to scare common sense. Back then, Ryan didn't care about trophies or cameras. He raced for the thrill, the raw rush of taming chaos at high speed. Every race etched his name into the asphalt, and soon, that name wasn't just whispered in local garages, it thundered across state lines. But Ryan wasn't just a daredevil, he was a builder. A tuner. An artist with a wrench in his hand. He co-founded BNR Performance, a garage that turned ordinary machines into monsters. He helped legends rise, drivers like Freakin' Rican and Jackie Knox, quietly watching others take the spotlight. Then came the moment he couldn't resist. The call of the streets was too loud. Ryan stepped out of the garage and into the flames, with the Fireball Camaro. And from that moment on, everything changed. Win after win, yet his ego stayed in the pit. Ryan Martin never needed to brag. He didn't talk big, he let speed speak. Calm. Focused. Always 3 moves ahead. For Ryan, this wasn't just about racing, it was about surviving it. But just when it looked like nothing could stop him, something did. There are moments in life that punch you without warning, and others that whisper before they strike. Ryan felt it. A strange weight in his gut. But like any racer with something to prove, he pushed forward. March 2021. Perth Motorplex. Street Outlaws, Australia. The Fireball Camaro, black, red, and ruthless, sat on the line with 2,500 horses snarling under the hood. The crowd roared. Cameras zoomed in. It was supposed to be just another test run. His third of the day. Clean. Simple. Then, chaos. He crossed the finish line. But something was wrong. Dead wrong. The car didn't slow down. A slick spot. Brake failure. A mechanical ghost. Whatever it was enough. The fireball snapped sideways and slammed into the retaining wall, hard. Not the kind of crash you shake off. The kind that echoes in your chest and leaves smoke trailing through your memory long after the track goes quiet. The front end crumpled, fiberglass torn apart, and carbon fiber cracked like fragile eggshells. The Fireball Camaro, once a roaring symbol of Ryan Martin's unmatched precision, raw power, and hard-earned legacy, now lay bruised and broken. He stepped out on his own, without a stretcher or ambulance, and cameras captured what looked like strength. But walking away didn't mean he wasn't hurt, because the worst injuries are often the ones no one can see. This crash wasn't just metal against a wall. It was the kind of moment that freezes time. It was supposed to be just another test run, but for hours afterward, Ryan stood in silence, staring at the wreckage. It wasn't about losing a race. It was about letting down the fans who had flown across the world just to see him light up the track. For the first time, those closest to him saw something new in Ryan Martin: hesitation. The invincible man, the one who once made speed look effortless, was shaken. There was a crack in the armor, a fracture in the confidence that had always fueled him. And tragically, this was just the beginning. In the world of racing, crashes are part of the job. But when the car is your identity, your weapon, your legacy, watching it fall apart is like losing a piece of yourself. Still, Ryan didn't complain. He didn't look for excuses or blame. He simply took it all in, quietly, like a man who knew that the road ahead would be longer than anyone could imagine. He didn't yell or run away, he just stood next to the wreck with his eyes wide and his jaw clenched, already planning how to rebuild. That's just who he is. So what was next for Ryan Martin? How did the calm guy on the list and two-time No Prep Kings champion turn things around? He lost everything he worked for. How did he deal with the heartbreak? Did Ryan give in to it or fight it? There are crashes with a bang and crashes with a silence that stays with you long after the flames go out. After the crash in Perth, Ryan didn't run away. Instead of taking a flight home, he and his crew, who were determined and tough, stayed in Australia. They were thousands of miles from their base and didn't have any spare parts or familiar faces. Most people would have given up, but Ryan wasn't going to let that happen. By night, they crawled over that broken Camaro. Under harsh garage lights, with tweezers and torque wrenches in hand, they checked every local fabricator in Sydney and Melbourne. They looked for carbon fiber clips like they were treasure and salvaged what they could. Drag said they would not get the parts they need for weeks, but they needed a running car in just a few days, so Ryan didn't know what to do. It was the worst time to crash his car, but he wasn't giving up. He knew that every bolt and weld was a challenge he had to cross. The Fireball Camaro wasn't just about fixing up a race car, it was also about saving a part of himself from ruin. He and his team scoured back alley workshops, traded with local gearheads, and made do with whatever they could find. There were no quick fixes or overnight miracles, they just spent nights smeared in grease and working on a Camaro that looked more like a ghost than a Fireball. But here's what most people missed. Ryan was not only rebuilding, he was also facing the world and himself. Each time he tightened a bolt, he felt pain. It was his way of telling the world that they could take his car, but they could never take his spirit. But behind the grit, something had changed. There was silence in the picture, and it wasn't just from the wrecked car. It was also from Ryan himself. His normally calm demeanor now had a hint of a man who had stood too close to the edge and come back a little more haunted. Even as Fireball slowly came back to life, reshaped and forged, the world around him was shaking in ways that no wrench could fix. But what do you do when the fire isn't under the hood, it's in your head? Just as flames consumed the Fireball during Ryan's crash, Ryan felt a fire burning inside him long before the wrecks. By mid-2022, Ryan Martin wasn't just rebuilding the Fireball from ash and carbon, he was facing a much more personal truth that couldn't be welded back together or tuned for better performance. Ryan told a lot of people something that not many people expected: he had been labeled with bipolar II disorder, a mood disorder. State that swings back and forth between crushing lows and wired highs. It wasn't a press release or a pity show, it was raw, brave, and honest. He was out on a medication plan for a mood disorder, but one thing was for sure, this was going to be his best fix. Unfortunately, the journey was exhausting, emotionally unrelenting, and lonely for Ryan, who kept to himself. It was the kind of challenge that doesn't come with screeching tires, but it makes even the strongest question their next step, and for Ryan, a man who had. Ryan had made a living by timing and reading the track, so losing control of his own thoughts felt like the cruelest twist of fate. He didn't talk about it much because that wasn't his style, but he did admit to memory loss in a few honest moments between race reports and shop work. Some of his medications made him feel numb and like he didn't recognize himself. Others made him forgetful and slow, and still others made him feel nothing at all. But he kept racing because he knew that unlike a broken axle or a broken motor, he couldn't just buy a new one at the shop, he had to learn to live with it, own it, and not run away from it. At night, after the track lights went out, Ryan faced a different kind of silence, one that wasn't filled with horsepower or adrenaline, one in which your mind goes back and forth, wondering everything from who you are to whether you're even ready for the next sunrise. But he kept going through every mood swing, sleepless night, and unexpected low, he kept rebuilding. He wasn't just rebuilding the Fireball, but himself as well. He realized that his real strength wasn't in how fast he went, but in his ability to rebuild and be better. Despite the setbacks, Ryan held on quietly and fiercely for himself and all of his fans who needed to know that even the fastest men need to slow down to heal. You'd think that the fire would be over by now, after everything, after rebuilding his car in a foreign country, after finding the words to describe his darkest thoughts, but it's 2022. It happened at a No Prep Kings event in September. The day started like any other, fans packed the stands, engines rumbled like distant thunder, and the Fireball Camaro patiently waited at the line, its growl barely contained under the hood. But no one, not Ryan, not his crew, not the crowd, could have seen what was coming. Mike Murillo, a friend and fellow racer, was chasing Ryan down the track in his Mustang. The race was clean, and you could feel the rush, but something went wrong during the race. Mike's car blew up. At one point, he was pushing his engine to its limits, and at another, he was really in danger of burning himself. Ryan, who was driving, watched everything happen and wondered if his friend would get lost in the fires. For a long time, the race didn't matter, he just wanted his friend to be safe. It didn't matter what the wind was like, Ryan himself was scared. He thought about his own experience and wondered if it might have been him fighting fire. As he sat there in his fireproof suit, his mind was racing with a million different ideas. This wasn't just another accident, it was something more fundamental. It was a reminder that accidents happen no matter how quick your reflexes are, how tight your bolts are, or how loud your fans cheer. Mike miraculously made it out of the building covered in smoke and soot, coughing and shaking. He would later talk about his near-death experience because Ryan didn't say much. He didn't do any interviews or post anything online afterward, and he didn't even talk to his crew. But people who knew him could tell that something had changed when the crowd left and the track lights went down. Ryan stayed alone for a long time after the last tire had cooled down and the cameras had turned off. He still couldn't get over what had happened, but sadly, this was just the beginning. What happened next broke him totally. But first, there was another race. Everything looked fine in this race, too. The weather was nice. Great, and the strip was pumped up with excitement. Ryan was calm as usual, but he was fighting a war inside, and it erupted when, seconds after the launch, one of the cars further down the track caught fire. The crowd gasped, track workers ran, and Ryan stood still, his heart pounding under his fireproof suit, because it could have been him. It had almost been him more than once, and there was still a chance it would be him next. Just when things seemed like they might calm down, there was another crash. Two close Ryan fellows, who was often seen on Street Outlaws, fastest in America, died in a fiery crash near Las Vegas on August 7, 2022. His gold Nissan 240Z flipped over and caught fire, killing him before anyone could get to him. Everyone was shocked, not just because he was a co-worker but also because he was family. The show stopped. Crews left the set, leaving fans speechless as they watched a loss that felt strangely personal. He and Ryan Fellows shared more than just a name, they had the same. They came from the same rough-edged world, roaring crowds, nights lit by headlights and hubris, and now one of them was dead, his life snuffed out in the same swirl of smoke. Ryan went through this, but he lived to race another day. Fans online were panicked. Different social media sites were buzzing with questions. They didn't know who died, they heard Ryan and thought it was Ryan Martin. The panic doubled on the internet, and it left a dark impression on Ryan. People were expecting him to die at any time, which made his medical condition worse, and Ryan saw a different kind of reality. He became also ate up by the emotional fee of the occasion itself and being mistaken to have died. He watched as his pals grieved. He noticed Ryan Fellows' spouse Liz and teenage son Josiah devastated and said he lost manage, went into the desert, flipped and stuck fire. He heard the Road Outlaws assertion, the circle of relatives is heartbroken, private sympathy. Nonetheless he stayed at the track, he held his floor and raced once more due to the fact In that silence while his teammates buried a brother, Ryan Martin understood that survival is not celebration, it is a burden, a call harassed with any other would not simply fade, it will become a spectre that haunts every turn, each beam of the Camaro's headlights, every red glow of the end line forged shadows of tragedy down the lane, and while he drove once more something modified, some part of that quiet killer turned into reshaped, smoothed through sorrow, scarred with the aid of memory, made fragile with the aid of guilt. Now every race wasn't just a take a look at a velocity, it become a homage to the fallen. A silent question, how many extra names can we whisper in the smoke? Ryan did not let worry paralyze him, and in 2023 he and his team added a defiant reminder at the Texas Model X. In a fierce unpredictable showdown he led his group to clinch the No Prep Kings Group championship. It wasn't simply another win, it turned into a resurrection, a roar from the shadows. Then in early 2025, whilst the air turned into thick with hypothesis approximately the show's future, Ryan stepped onto a smaller stage, however without a much less depth. A chilly March night time, a regional meet, a crowd of diehards and skeptics, and there he became once more, taking over Kai Kelly in a small tire jewel that reminded everybody the hearth hadn't gone out. He did not simply race, he dominated. That win wasn't televised, there have been no sluggish movement, replays or confessionals cut between segments, just asphalt, adrenaline, and a man refusing to be forgotten. And maybe this is the factor, because for Ryan Martin this turned into in no way about repute or fanfare, it become and continually has been about pace and hearing the engine roar. So whilst Street Outlaws is quiet for now due to the fact discovery is pausing matters, Ryan isn't always sitting on his palms and looking forward to the show to get again on air. There is no real date for when the show will go back to regular programming, however that does not mean the tale is over, not for Ryan, no longer for the street. Instead a new chapter is being written now, not under studio lighting fixtures but underneath open skies and local tracks and live streams. Perhaps this is exactly where Ryan belongs now, because what subjects maximum isn't how loud the arena is around you, it's miles whether your heart nevertheless beats for what you like. And for Ryan Martin, he lives for racing, and he's still racing and riding his tail 1 mile at a time. The cameras may have focused someplace else and the roar of the gang remote, however a racer in no way loses heart, it does not just fade, it grows, evolves, and remains hungry. For Ryan Martin the journey did not quit whilst the credits rolled on Road Outlaws. If anything, that became just a bankruptcy. Ryan wasn't doing it for the cameras, he raced because he cherished it and would constantly keep to accomplish that. He has accomplished lots as a street racer and has shown how intimidating and powerful he is behind the wheels. What subsequent might come from him